So this definitely isn't a great look for Tim Walz, but we're here to enjoy it. We're here to soak up every moment of this humiliating, just a crowd booing, heckling Tim Walz in Minnesota. Okay. It says, watch. This is watch as Tim Walz gets heckled and booed by military veterans over his stolen valor.
Welcome to the Capitol. It's great that you're here. Sir, you're welcome to come. Let me finish. Let me finish. Oh, hey, there's some passion in the middle.
How embarrassing. But I mean, can you argue with them? I mean, are they lying? Are they? I don't think they are. I don't think they're lying. Now, granted, after we watched Tim Walz drowned in booze by veterans for his stolen valor, we do see, or at least are shown, told, exposed, confirmed, confirmation. We're getting closure here after this disastrous, failed Biden administration. As Charlie Kirk says, in a shocking moment of honesty, Chuck Todd admits that the media helped cover up Biden's mental decline because they were afraid of helping Trump win. He says, remember, they'd rather lie to you than tell you the truth if the truth helps President Trump. And I want you guys to remember that as we continue on here.
I sit here and I'll defend a little bit of this in that I would argue the reason people were able to come to their own conclusion on Joe Biden is because of the media coverage. You know, look, we were subtle. He's using the back staircase. He's not using the front staircase. Hey, he's not doing any interviews. So there was this reluctance to draw the conclusion to say, is he not doing this? And that I agree with. That was held back a lot. I would argue it was also held back a lot back in the late 80s when it was clear Ronald Reagan wasn't necessarily running everything in the White House. Whether you want to call it decorum, whatever you want to call it, look, there were plenty of members of the media. I remember David Ignatius in the Washington Post, plenty of individual people questioning whether he should run. I certainly questioned whether he should run. You didn't understand, there were some of that. But I understand the argument about the collective on that front. The only thing I can chalk it up to is this, whatever you want to call it, this fear that some members of the media had sometimes that they would be perceived as helping Trump if they somehow diminished Biden, right? That it was some sort of zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. And I think this has been the fundamental mistake that many members of the traditional press have done.
Definitely a mistake, for sure. But let's break this down. Let's unpack what he just said. As he mentions, people were able to come to their own conclusion on Joe Biden because of the media coverage, which was really the lack thereof. So it's like, from the perspective of this guy, the left, the media, they would rather just not tell you. They would rather not necessarily lie to you, for instance, like Tim Walz would lie, but just not say anything. And granted, they're continuously trying to throw President Trump under the bus, or former President Donald Trump under the bus at the time, and telling you all sorts of things, making up all sorts of stories, while just kind of just pretending like Joe Biden wasn't there. And I mean, even if it's something as trivial as which staircase he's going to use or not on Air Force One, the fact that the media held back the coverage and didn't ask for interviews and didn't really bring the news as they should, I mean, it says a lot, right? It's essentially them controlling the narrative and dictating how they want to indoctrinate and and disinform as many people as they possibly can. Whether you want to call it decorum or you want to relate it to Ronald Reagan, essentially saying that, well, it's okay that Ronald Reagan wasn't necessarily running the show in the 80s in the White House. So yeah, that's pretty much what Joe Biden was doing. He wasn't really running the show. And now we can tell you guys because it doesn't matter anymore. And let me know what you guys think about this comment that I read on a previous video. And it says, I say better to play golf than sleeping while his staff pretended to be the president with the auto pen. And the media just didn't want to help Trump. Good Lord. Diabolical. treasonous. They should be held accountable. And the media, with this fear of possibly being this perception of them helping Trump by shining the light on the actual fact of the news that Biden was incompetent and not capable and quite possibly just confused and disoriented and near early onset dementia. They didn't really care. They just didn't want to help Trump in any way, shape, or form, and they would ultimately allow this country to fall apart because of that. You see four faces here just in shock and awe. Now, granted, Piers, he's probably, Piers and the young lady on the former DNC young lady here on the other end, they're probably like, yeah, this is nothing really new. I can't believe that you're saying this. But, even dipshit Jamal in the middle, even he's just kind of like, or maybe he's just dumbfounded. I don't know. Maybe he's just too stupid to say anything. And speaking of lying to folks, and speaking of the Biden administration and Democrats and the media, we're going to go take a stroll down memory lane here, flashback to Joe Biden's press secretary and what she had to say about the president and the stock market and any ties and connections and correlations to the overall economy.
On the markets, does the president think it's a big deal that today the Dow Jones is down at one point more than 1,100 points?
Well, to start with, we focus on the trends in the economy, not any one day and any single indicator. Unlike his predecessor, the president does not look at the stock market as a means by which to judge the economy.
And I mean, if we go back just a few days ago when President Trump was asked if he's looking at the stock market, his answer was, no, I'm not looking at the stock market.
This is something that we have to do. There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but the countries and companies that have been ripping us aren't particularly happy with what I'm doing. But the United States will be very happy. And, our farmers are going to be very happy. And again, there'll be disruption. But in the end, I said it before with China, we signed an unbelievable deal with China, $50 billion in purchases, and we're doing great. Biden, however, when he came in, they never enforced that deal. So that's the only thing that basically you have globalist companies that have been ripping us off that won't be able to rip us off any longer. I think that's what the big charge is.
Have you been influenced, some of these exemptions that have been announced and some of these temporary delays, have you been influenced in those decisions because of the market reaction?
Well, there are no delays at all. No, nothing to do with the market. I'm not even looking at the market because long term, the United States will be very strong with what's happening here. Now, these are countries and companies, foreign companies that have been ripping us off, and no president did anything about it until I came along, and then I did a lot about it. We took in tariffs from China, $600 billion. Nobody else took in 10 cents from China. They never did. But when COVID came along, we had to focus on COVID. We did a great job. We got rid of that. We ended up handing over with a market that was higher than it was previous to COVID coming in. But this is very much about companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore.
However, this fake news that comes out of the White House from Jen Psaki, who's still doing the same shit, just, a different day. Does anyone flip-flop more than the Democrats? I think is a valid question asked here by Christian Collins. Only to then have to ask the same question for some Republicans. Benny Johnson says, breaking. The U.S. House passes H.R. 1526, restricting district rogue court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions against presidential policies. And yes, it passed 218 to 214. But if you notice here, you'll see that 2 Republicans voted nay. Well, let's go ahead and make them famous. The 2 POS RINO Republicans that voted no: Dan Newhouse, Washington, and Mike Turner, Ohio. So, yeah, if you guys want to do with that as you will, there's a lot of talk going on about Ohio here recently. Yeah, I think it's I think it's pretty jacked up that Republicans would even, but I guess it's just showing their hand basically. And they can't hide it. And I guess the worst part is, I guess they thought that it wouldn't pass, but only to find out that it did pass. And we found out who the RINOs really will be primaried. Yeah. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Get rid of this trash. Jasmine Crockett lecturing Americans on how incompetent Trump administration is. But hear me out. This entire video, this short video, I didn't plan on doing another video. This is going to be my last one. And for today, is essentially about Democrats lying. So is Jasmine Crockett lying, or is she telling the truth?
Right now, ICE is trying to work with the IRS because we actually take in billions of dollars because of immigrants in this country, and now they're going to try to get them out. And I'm going to tell you that the biggest issue that we have, I really don't think this should be a partisan issue, so I'm going to agree with my Republican colleagues. I think that we all should want to be safe in our communities. The problem that we have is that we have an incompetent administration, that everything that they touch turns to shit. Because what they do is they take a wide sweeping brush and they have decided that the enemy is now going to be immigrants instead of taking a scalpel. That's all we're asking, is to be exact in what you're doing instead of taking a sledgehammer to everything. Thank you, and I will yield.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. The media lies and covers up Democrats' incompetence. Democrats lie while standing at the press briefing, lectern, and podium. Tim Walz lies and steals valor and gets called out by a crowd of angry veterans. And Jasmine Crockett says that everything that the Trump administration touches turns to shit. Well, maybe, I don't know. Did the Trump administration happen to touch Jasmine Crockett? Because she's definitely a piece of shit.